Here we go. We're off.
It's recording.
It's recording.
Starting from the beginning again.
Starting from the beginning.
All right.
Here we
Sounds
go.
good.
Brother man.
What's up, brother? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Happy
Take
to be
7.
here. Yeah. Yeah. But so funny, just candid moment. We've definitely been navigating some technical difficulties
Yes, we
since
have.
episode 2, and even as we are attempting to make this episode. But here we are.
Yeah.
Once again, I am Dr. Antonio Martinez here with my brilliant, amazing, talented cousin John with the Light Up Life podcast. This is episode 2, which we're hoping we're able to complete from start to finish this time around. The concept that we dove into or were wanting to dive into was that of a fixed versus a growth mindset. We believe that it is a benefit not only to spread awareness on what kind of these two things entail, but also how it has impacted our lives, whether it be the way that we learned about it, how we utilize it today, whether it be that of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. But before we dive into the concept as a whole, we also had talked about during our vision planning wanting to dedicate a few minutes during our episodes to provide an opportunity, a safe space, a healthy space, a vulnerable space for one of us to check in.
Yes.
And if it's okay with you, I'd love for you to kind of lead that as a way of not only modeling, but having a space for you to share with me and share with whoever is taking the time to view our podcast, how you're doing. And that can be from an emotional standpoint, mental standpoint, physical standpoint, spiritual standpoint, whatever feels true to you and that you're compelled to share with us today.
Thank you. I like the breakdown: spiritual, emotionally, mentally. I think spiritually, I'm up high.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off of Easter Sunday and being in the play and everything. We had a great service yesterday. I took a lot from it. We're actually my our lead pastor and executive pastor is a fraternity brother.
Yeah, Brother Kelly Woods.
Dr. Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's like very, very cool guy, very smart guy, very sharp,
Mm-hmm.
especially with his messages. So I take a lot from it. But mentally, I have been fatigued a lot more than usual. I've been sort of in a rut because I can't get up every morning and go to the gym like I have been doing it for years.
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to do that takes from obviously my morning, but then also my day.
Yeah.
Because when I get that done, it almost feels like I'm getting done with the hardest part of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the day after that is just a decline.
Yeah.
Well, not a decline, but it's easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I can't do that, and you take that from me, something that I've been doing for such a long time, it's a little hard to find a substitute for that. Like, I don't know where, when, how to even go about some of my mornings, right?
Yeah.
Like, we were on the way up here, we were talking about how I have different phases in music, and I'm really diving into like Billy Joel and like the Flamingos and the 60s and Motown and things of that sort, because it's making me feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't quite do it for me,
Yeah.
because I don't get the all the actual scientifical attributes or pros that come with working out, right? The endorphins that you release, just getting the stretches in and making sure that my body feels right. So that's been weighing on me. And then on sort of my job and my professional career, I always feel like I'm contributing, and I'm helping out, and I'm working with cross departmentally, and I'm doing what I have to do, but I'm not really sure where my North Star is right now for my own personal development.
Yeah.
I have been lucky enough to be sort of in charge, or at the very least ahead, the Salesforce database. And it is a great responsibility, one that I'm fully up for the challenge for, but I don't necessarily know where that's going, what that really looks like within a 3-year to 5-year plan, which is what any organization ultimately should have or should want, right? Sort of your data plan for the next 3 to 5 years. And I do feel a sense of responsibility and a bit of ownership for in regards to that task and that objective. But Bro, I don't know where to
Yeah,
start, where to begin.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at, man. That's and this is at first I actually hadn't talked to him about this specific thing, even though we talk very often. Um, so I was actually looking forward to the check in. So man, I appreciate you for giving me the space and the time.
Yeah. So, right, a part of the check-in, I want to make sure that um, we're honoring what you just shared. So, thank you. Not only for me to be able to hear the layers of these different experiences that you're navigating personally, professionally, but also the beautiful spiritual experiences that you just had, both on Easter Sunday and then yesterday, right, which was Sunday as well. And shout out to Pastor and fraternity brother Kelly Woods, very
Yeah,
influential and impactful man I
absolutely.
know in my life. So I think it's amazing and just full circle that he is now such a critical piece in your life. So definitely
Yes,
want
yes, he
to
is.
honor and recognize that part first and foremost. Then a part of your physical routine, right? You didn't mention it this time around. And again, to be candid, this is probably take three. And you've shared in the first
Yeah,
two
and
that
it's
it's
always
because
been
of
different.
your
Yeah.
back injury, right?
Yes, yes,
Which you
yes.
didn't get a chance to share this time around. And so that is what has kind of put John a little bit on the sideline or has made him have to be a little bit more thoughtful with how much he is pushing his body. And so what I would say to that is, which I've told you before, to definitely start with giving yourself grace, and a part of grace is just giving your body the patience that it needs to be able to reach the full level of recovery so that one, you can really feel like your full self once you dive in at the level that I know you like to dive in physically within your physical fitness. But two, just as importantly, so that you don't re injure it or possibly make it
Yes.
worse and then get set back, right? I mentioned this in one of the takes that someone that came to mind who has gone through this in regards to injuries and it then taking a toll mentally, which I was saying is very normal to have to be a part of the experience of any physical injury, was that of Klay Thompson, NBA basketball, four-time
Four-time
champion,
champ.
all-star, amazing guy. Actually, very fascinating mind and way of thinking. If
Yeah.
you've ever heard him talk,
Yeah,
um,
he's a definite. I think fascinating is a perfect word to
he's
describe
a
him. Yeah,
deep thinker, but you
yeah,
wouldn't really be able to tell because he just kind of has this laid back, like mellow,
hmm
sometimes goofy personality. He throws airplanes in his press conferences after the games or
he's
post conferences.
he sells to work.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
just
he's on a boat, right?
yeah,
But to circle back to just kind of how I want to connect Klay Thompson with you is that over the last few years, he has dealt with some really significant injuries. If I'm not mistaken, I think he might have tore his
hmm
ACL, then he tore
yeah,
his Achilles, the same injury that actually kind of ended Kobe Bryant's career for better or for worse in regards to like his effectiveness, right? So there is definitely evidence that these injuries are can really just damage your career. And yet, for him to be out there and still doing what he does, just shout out to you, Klay. But the behind the scenes insight that he has given us is that a part of these injuries, the hardest part isn't like the rehab. Like that can actually be somewhat fun, right? It's like you
we
against you
could
physically
no,
to get back to where you once were. But it's the mental part of not really ever knowing, can I get back to where I once was and who I
hmm
once was? Will any of this even matter in helping me get there, or am I going to be a lesser version of myself? So the same way I'm telling you, I tell Klay, but again, back to you is to kind of just have that grace. Definitely honor your body with where it's at right now, and obviously push it in ways that you feel comfortable and that you feel is safe. Um, because I know that you're a very ambitious and driven person when it comes to your physical fitness, right? You're also an ex athlete. So that's always been a part of your identity,
yeah,
right? So I think it makes sense that it's taken a toll on you mentally. And I don't have like the perfect answer, but the answer that I would probably give you and anybody out there dealing with a physical injury is to trust the process of what it entails to rehab and to get back to, even if it's 99% of who you once were, even if it's not 100%, and then still finding a way to like love and embrace and accept that new 99%, right?
yeah,
In regards to your career, I think it's just extraordinary the work that you do. You work at New Doors,
yeah.
which is an amazing organization. I think we may have mentioned this in our attempt to have recorded this episode last Monday before
True.
we faced technical difficulties there. That your CEO is actually somebody who was the CEO of an organization that I once worked for, which
He
was out of
was.
College Track, which did similar work, right? Which was to give back to the community. And so to know that you're a part of an organization that has a purpose of giving back, I think is just amazing, regardless of what capacity or what role you have in that organization. And so, yeah, I think what you were saying makes a lot of sense of you're currently at this stage and you're really proud of where you're at, right?
Absolutely.
You know that the work you're doing is meaningful, and I think it's also still normal to like be curious and wonder what's next though, right? Like what's
Hmm.
next for me. And so I guess my question, and then after this I won't necessarily give you any additional thoughts so we can get back to our concept, but my question to you is, what do you want to be next? Because I think that's
Ooh,
huge.
yeah, yeah, it's a great question. I think it actually even goes hand in hand with what we're going to talk about in sec. Um, one thing that I do want, and that I didn't know I wanted until last year, I went to Dreamforce, which is Salesforce's
Mm-hmm.
biggest event. That I think they might even move due to the conditions in San Francisco. But they have a chief technology officer. For some reason, I
Mm.
didn't know that was a title,
Like a thing,
a
yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I actually had the opportunity to talk to him because he was out. They filmed throughout the whole event, and so you'll see, the CEO of Salesforce, Mark, walk around. You see the CTO. You'll see, different people who are actually, way up
Just like up
in
there, yeah.
way up there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just kind of walking around, filming these videos and interviewing, sort of in an interview style. And he was just chilling there, just talking to people. And I asked him like, "Hey, like, I was trying to be as I guess as humble as I possibly could. I was like, hey, coming from somebody who just kind of fell into this position,
Mm-hmm.
into this role, because
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened
Mm-hmm.
at New York. Um, what should I be aiming for?
Mm-hmm.
And then, he was like, well, you should be aiming to just better your database and your data. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's very
Yeah,
simple,
yeah, yeah.
right?
Very broad.
But it's so true because it's just, we had a conversation about, sometimes having these problems in your life that are super complicated,
Yeah.
that are very, very complicated. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the approach that you have to take needs to be just
Just
as
as
complicated.
complicated.
So I took that, and I applied it a lot to a bunch of spreadsheets and reports that I was sending out on, on a weekly basis and stuff. And sometimes less is more is my concept. So I say all that to say that where I want to be at is sort of the CTO kind of
Mm,
role, but within that role, to simplify
yeah.
processes within the organization so that we don't have to necessarily look at something and kind of scratch your head and wonder for too long what it's all about.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that I'm also bringing from the finance industry, which I
Yep.
worked at for over 10
Mm-hmm.
years,
Mm-hmm.
where it's more like how fast can we get to something,
Yeah.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
how is it that we're using all our data to cut out the fluff, get to the meat and potatoes,
Yeah.
and find a plan of attack that is both proven through data driven results and also just going to save everybody time,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
so
Efficient. Efficient.
the efficient optimizing the
Mm-hmm.
efficiency of it
Optimizing.
all.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's more like developing processes and stuff. So I guess I do kind of know where I want to be.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
don't know where to start.
Yeah.
It's,
For sure.
and at least I have the end result.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you hold on to that so that you can continue your process. And I think, it's what I will say is that it's so interesting how I think a lot of the times I know I've had this experience where I'm like, I don't know something. And then somebody asks me, well, what do you know? And then I'll kind of start sharing and it uncovers what I just said I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I just thank you for doing that. And I have nothing but just like blessings that I send your way to,
Thank
in
you.
hopes that it contributes in any way, shape, or form with you accomplishing that goal for yourself professionally.
Yeah.
Which I know if and when it happens, it's going to be well deserved, and it's going to be something that you're going to continue to take a lot of pride in as you do with everything else that you do in your life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And so now to transition into the concept that this episode revolves around, which is the fixed and the growth mindset.
Hmm.
We did get a few clips from last Monday when we attempted to record this episode, and we shared those two clips. Shout out to, again, my friends John and Daniel, who I shouted out a little early on Instagram, just for actually sharing with me that they watched the podcast, right? And I was
Yeah.
telling you when I
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
here that it was so interesting because we didn't really post anything last week
All right.
because of the technical difficulties that we experienced. And yet here I had two really dope guys, which hopefully you'll get a chance to meet one day. One has your name, and he's really cool too,
He got it.
John.
He has to be cool.
Yeah, super cool. For them to come up to me and be like, "Hey, I'm checking out the clips, bro, and keep doing what you're doing." Like,
It's amazing.
you both are putting together something that you don't see often, which is men of color having these vulnerable, honest conversations who grew up in communities where that was not the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that actually goes really great within the concept. So I'll share a little bit right from a fixed mindset, from a growth mindset. So for anybody out there that has not heard about these concepts, and I'll let you elaborate
Sure,
a little
sure.
bit in a bit, because in the clips that I did share, you had mentioned how you've done workshops on it, right?
Yeah, I have.
But the way that I've come to learn what fixed mindset versus growth mindset is, that a fixed mindset is you have a belief, right, about either your abilities, your skills, about life, and that is the belief that you navigate the world with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Very little can change it unless you're allowing for that belief to change. And a growth mindset is this ideology that you're open and you know that there's more. There's
Mm-hmm.
more mentally, there's more physically, there's more spiritually, there's more emotionally that you can tap into with the right guidance. If you're surrounding yourself in spaces where conversations around about those things are happening, and with the right desire and commitment to it, right?
Yes.
Because none of it's going to happen overnight per se. Some of it will. But where you really want to get to, you might never really get there with the growth mindset because you're always wanting to grow, if you really think about it in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the journey is that of knowing that there are significant examples that you are growing, right? And that might be in the way that you're able to engage in conversations that you never thought you'd be able to about certain concepts, topics. It might be you being able to have a new PR in the gym, right? A personal record, I think is what PR stands for,
Yeah.
right? It might be a bench press. It might be you ran the mile faster, right? That's a growth mindset, knowing I could always get a little bit better, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit, right? Spiritually, you just might become more aware of what spirituality means to you versus just saying, I'm a spiritual person,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I go to church. But then maybe the growth mindset is, I want to get involved in church, though, right? I'll go to church,
Right,
but how do I
right.
get involved in church? Because now I want to make an impact and I want to share. I want to give back with due to what's being given to me, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for anybody out there that these concepts are new to, those are some ways and some examples that I feel help describe fixed and growth mindset and the differences between the two. But I'll let you share now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you're spot on. A lot of that stuff is directly stated, or not word for word quoted in the theory that Carol Dweck
Mm-hmm.
developed some years ago. Carol Dweck was a professor, or is a professor, at Stanford, and she came up with the concept of growth and fixed mindsets. So I would say, in addition to all that you mentioned, that was a great description of both mindsets. For a growth mindset, it's also able to celebrate in
Mm-hmm.
other people's accomplishments
Love that.
and be able to feed off it, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, and that would be the opposite for a fixed
For
mindset,
sure.
right? So somebody with a fixed mindset doesn't necessarily understand these accomplishments, has struggles with accepting that maybe somebody did better than
Yep.
them,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
and that is, obviously detrimental to their growth, because they're kind of just stuck in that in that thought
Yeah.
process, and it limits them from them doing either what was proven to be done,
Mm-hmm.
or they just give up
Yes.
completely
Mm-hmm.
and say
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, forget Antonio, like, man, forget that. I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm done with that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never gonna be either as good, or you may
Mm.
even go like, he thinks he's all that. I'm gonna let
Mm-hmm.
him be,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever he thinks he is. So that's one thing that I try to always bring up to the forefront with the youth. So as you mentioned, I do conduct or facilitate workshops specifically for growth and
Fixed
fixed
mindset.
mindsets. And when I'm talking about all this and explaining to them sort of the different attributes and descriptions of what either are, I tend to ask them, do you know anybody
Yeah.
who has a growth mindset?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I just leave it as vague as that. So as open as possible.
Yeah.
So they can name a celebrity, they
Yep.
can name somebody,
Athlete.
an
Mm-hmm.
athlete,
Family member.
a family member, somebody who they saw
Mentor.
on the interview
Yeah.
or
Oh.
something, can
Yep.
recall like, hey, I saw this one guy that was really, but you don't really get a lot of answers,
Mm-hmm.
And I usually when I get up and I'm talking, I really engage, and I before I really jump into it, I have conversations almost one on one with whoever's in the room, so that they can feel comfortable and they do respond, right? So I'm asking these questions in full confidence that I'll get a response back, but I don't really get a lot of responses back when I ask them if they know anybody with a growth mindset. So I immediately have them pull out their phone. Right, it's a very cheesy thing to do. I have them, pull out the camera, have them flip it around, and have them see themselves.
Yeah.
Right, like the fact that you're in here
Yeah.
right now proves that you are going to do something to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
This is an example of someone who is taking a growth mindset approach by being here in
by
this
being
space.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in a place that you're most likely not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you're talking to
Mm-hmm.
somebody who you just met,
For sure.
like but you're still willing and accepting to learn a little bit more about different strategies and different ways of going about life that can contribute to your success.
Yeah.
Right, somebody with a fixed mindset
Wouldn't have showed up.
wouldn't have even
Yeah.
showed up.
They would have been in their room and said, "What's the point? That's going to be a waste of time." They've
Exactly.
already decided the outcome of an experience that they haven't experienced yet.
Absolutely. And I think the dangers of that isn't only in a personal level, but then that kind of attitude could be very easy to
Like spread.
transmit, is what
Yeah.
you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so if you're stuck with people who have been doing the same thing for
Yeah.
since the 90s, who have been
Mm-hmm.
talking the same way, who don't really seem to attend new, say, parties, like for example, at one of my favorite movies, and I think it's a comedic classic, is Anchorman, right?
Mm.
And Ron Burgundy, in the beginning, he goes, "Yeah, we've been coming to the same party for 13 years, and in no way that's obviously it's meant to be ironic,
Yes, for sure.
right? But we all know people like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all know people who have
Yeah.
been sort of stuck in their ways for
Yeah.
such a long time,
Yeah.
and it's easy to get caught up in that. So the fact that they're able to see themselves and sort of reflect and kind of hopefully feel like, you know what, man, heck yeah,
Yeah.
heck yeah, maybe they can brush off some of that fixed mindset after that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think you explained it very, very well.
I,
Yeah.
I love how you elaborated though, and you gave those examples of those who you work and do these workshops for. I think it's really beautiful. I know you said it was cheesy, and it can be seen that way. That could be a fixed mindset,
It could be.
or it could be
Yeah, yeah,
seen as symbolic and
yeah, yeah.
powerful. And you're making it personal for them,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
That you're really there with them, present in that moment, and you're honoring and acknowledging and recognizing their presence in that space. Which, like we just said, they didn't have to be there, right? They could have very easily decided this isn't going to be worth my time. I don't know this guy. What does he know about me? What am I even going to learn here that I don't already know? Right?
Yeah,
Especially when we're talking about younger people, which again, I don't want to generalize, but at that age in life, like we kind of feel like we know it all. Not knowing
yeah.
that we hardly know anything,
Mm,
right?
mm-mm.
And especially right, something you had mentioned last week that wasn't recorded, especially depending on the communities that you grow up in, right? So
Yes.
if you don't necessarily have the best role models or people who are talking about these concepts, or if you're not even aware that these are concepts that exist within us, right, and how we
Hmm.
navigate our day-to-day lives, this just may be the way we think we were always intended to be. We might not know that there's a different way of viewing life, right? And so I actually want to do something a bit different than we did last week, because
Cool.
I've had a week to think about the fact that our episode didn't complete itself.
Yeah,
I wanted to ask you, and if then you want to ask me back, that's fine. But if
yeah.
you want to then go somewhere else, I'm open to that too. Going back to your younger years, what is an example of a fixed mindset that you once had that you now look back on and you're like, wow, I'm so glad that I don't still navigate life with that fixed mindset?
Mm, I can think of a few,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the one that I had to work on the most was believing people believing that I was supposed to be just some I was supposed to be something, and it
Mm,
was directly because of other people's opinions and stuff like that.
got it. Got it.
So, you know, I'm not supposed to be in finance world. I'm not supposed to be, talking to clients who have portfolios that are worth multi-millions of dollars. I'm not supposed to be doing this and doing that. I even remember a few times when, well, my definition of success, I just had a conversation with somebody yesterday about this, was, at least for careers, was a job with a suit, right?
Fair. Yep.
Like
Yep.
that for me was like, oh man, I made it.
Yeah. Or
Not
with an
knowing,
office, maybe in an
with an
office, a
office,
suit.
a
Yep.
view,
Mm-hmm.
like a few levels up, working
Mm-hmm.
downtown San Francisco, and I was lucky enough to experience all that. But I remember one time I was walking back home from Barton, I saw a friend of mine, and he goes, well, "Who do you think you are?"
Yeah.
Like, well, in Spanish it's like, "Oh, ya te crees," you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's like, it made me feel like, you know what, you're right. Who am I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, ¿qué me creo yo?
Yeah.
Right? Like, who do
Yeah.
I think I am?
Yeah.
Um, and it took me a while to get over that imposter syndrome, to get over
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that, like, yeah, I do belong in the big leagues,
Yes.
like I
Yes.
do belong,
Yes.
and I need to walk into a room feeling like that,
Yeah.
right? It's very important to me now to be able to, when I so it's important to me now that when I say something, I say it with confidence, and
Yes.
coming from a place of, um, like, that I actually know it
Yeah.
about it,
Yeah.
but it took me a minute because I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Going back to what you said about, being 18 or just young in
Yeah.
general,
Just young in general.
and thinking that you know everything. It's not so much that, like, I admire that in a sense, because it shows a bit of, like, a
Yeah.
bravery, right?
Yeah.
You're
For
very
sure.
brave for
Yeah.
thinking that
That
way.
you think you know everything. Yeah.
Like, that
That's
you're
bold
so,
as hell if you really think about it.
that you're willing to walk into a dark room and just feel like you know where every, the couch is at, where the
Yeah.
ottoman's at.
Yeah.
So in a sense, that's a very powerful thing to have. But, life will check you real quick,
Humble you.
humble you super fast. Um, but I think the trick, or one of the tricks to kind of, um, to help with that, is, not is once again, it's going to sound cheesy, but believing in yourself, or in something that's just bigger than you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. We talked
There's so
about
many
that.
things that work in this world,
Mm-hmm.
that it's now at my age, if you want to have, if you have a fixed mindset, I almost feel like it's because you actually want to have it,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and at that age, it's a lot different. But yeah, just to answer your question, just believing that, I mean, I do
Yeah.
belong
That you
in the
belong in those
realms
spaces,
that I was at,
and that you're capable and deserving of your accomplishments.
yeah, yeah, definitely capable,
Mm.
deserving as well. Yeah.
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 I love that.
And I have a question. It's off, a little bit off topic,
Mm-hmm.
but, well, it's not off topic, but it's not the same question. Do you have somebody in your life that made you feel, and it's just because of what I said,
Mm-hmm.
made you feel like this is where you belong, and this is where you're gonna stay?
As in where I'm at now, or as in where I was
Where you're
back
at
then?
then, before you
Um,
got to, say, college, or to do the things that you've
hmm,
done. Has there been anybody in particular? Obviously, we don't want to name any
for
names, but
sure.
what was the experience, if you have had that before?
I would say, gonna be a bit of a cop out, but myself,
No.
a bit of a cop out,
Oh
right?
no,
But
that's.
myself, in that I gave so much value to the thoughts and opinions that everyone around us had, right? Whether it
Hmm.
was family, because sometimes it was family,
Yeah.
a lot of times it was
A lot of
family,
times it's
a
family.
lot of times it
Yeah.
was family. Our education system, right? Because if
Yes.
you weren't an AP student, you weren't given the same access or experience as the other students, right? I've shared this with a lot of my college students. I didn't go on a college tour, mind
Hmm.
you. Shout out to Roxy, who engaged with our Instagram, the Light Up Life Instagram. She said, or she asked, like, she'd want to know like how I came to be a doctor, right?
Oh,
And
that's
the
nice.
reason why I want to like mention them is because there was a point in time where that was the furthest thing I could have ever imagined myself being,
I can believe that.
because I
Yeah.
was not an AP student. I was not an honor roll student. I was not your prototypical scholar. I was like about a 2.0 student for baseball, because you needed a
Oh
2.0 to
yeah.
compete,
Yeah.
right? So I
Yes, you
made sure I
did.
had my grades for baseball, which I know I touched upon in the first episode as to how that was like a life saving experience for me, right? So that was actually the only thing that really drove me in high school. But the education system, John F. Kennedy, Dijon Middle School, Helms Middle School, Lincoln Elementary, there weren't many adults who pulled me to the side and made me feel like they saw something in me, right?
Mm.
So it wasn't even what was being said to me. Sometimes it was what wasn't being said to me. But I was observing some of
Yes.
my other peers were having to talk about, like, you could go to college. Have you ever thought about that? No one was saying that to me. So I took that as in, well, that's not my destiny. Like, I guess I'm not capable for that because no one's telling me that they see that in me. But right, with baseball, I had coaches tell me, you're good, I want you on my team. So I didn't know what it was to have validation and words of affirmation on things that I was good at, but school never felt like it was that for me, right? But shout out Mr. Pollock, who still works
Oh
at
my
John
God,
F. Kennedy,
amazing.
although he's been saying he's wanting to retire for like 20 years.
He's been saying that
Uh,
since we were there. Yeah.
so he was actually the man who did the flip side. I know you didn't ask that, but I want to honor him. And a part of
Yeah.
Roxy's kind of question, he was the first literal man in my life who put his arm around me, physically and metaphorically speaking, and said, "I believe in you." And I can go as to like how that happened maybe in a different episode when it feels like it's the right kind of space of conversation. But going back to your question, I think it was a multitude of experiences that then made me create a fixed mindset as to who I thought I could be, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for so long, I felt okay with that, right? It wasn't until Mr. Pollock who made me realize, like, no, Antonio, you can be more than this. I know you've convinced yourself based off of all of these different opinions, judgments, feelings people have made of you that this is who you need to be, and that you're only going to see Richmond and nothing else but Richmond. He made me realize I could see the world outside of Richmond. And it was, I thank that man every day, man, before I go to sleep. Even when I know I'm not saying it unconsciously, I thank him through
Yeah.
being alive and through doing what I'm doing. Because he saved my life in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like I have a teacher who you know of and you actually played for, in Nicholas Salabrici, and
Mm-hmm.
we're over here just honoring people because they
Yeah,
actually deserve it. You
yeah.
know, like I don't know where I would be at if it wasn't for Sal. And I've had like the privilege to speak to his students. He's still teaching out in
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse or in the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if he's exactly teaching in Syracuse, but I guess what I also want to bring to light is just as easy as it is to be stuck around those people who keep you in that fixed mindset
Mm-hmm.
and that capped level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if you pay attention just a little bit harder, you will find people who are just there to actually help you out.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
people who actually care, really care, because it's confusing because a lot of the people that you grew up with, just depending on your circle, I can say for myself, I would say a good amount of people in my life that I grew up with are kind of cool where they're at, and that's fine.
Yeah,
Um, but not for me.
yeah,
You know, like
yeah.
I feel like I have a lot yet to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
and if I stick around, and it's gonna sound messed up, but it's just the truth. If I stick around, kind of doing the same thing that I've been doing that I was doing last year and the year before that, how could I really expect
Yeah.
to grow and contribute like I know that I can?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you have these people who fortify that and sort of in a sense make you believe it,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because Sal, oh, you know, he saw something in me that at that the tender age of 15, 14, 15, 16,
You didn't see it yourself.
I didn't see,
Mm-hmm.
didn't know,
Mm-hmm.
um, for sure didn't have enough role models or anything to be able to to model that. And he just simply just through sort of that tough 90s love would give me like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah,
What, where's your assignment
for
at?
sure.
Like, like how are you missing an assignment?
Yeah.
And that's the center that he held
Yeah.
for me, right?
Yeah.
Like there were other kids in class, and it, you know, I don't mean to bust you out, Sal, but it kind of seemed like he went harder on me than
Yeah.
he did other
Yeah.
students, just
Yeah.
because maybe he saw a little bit more in me than he
Yeah.
did. And just recently talking to him, he said, when I was talking to him, and I said, and I really struggled with like high school, and she's like, for real? Like it seemed like like he had it under
Yeah.
control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like I was going off the rails.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for those who are struggling with finding motivation or find just like a little bit harder, I promise you, it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether it's your teacher, whether it's your mom,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's your pastor, whether it's your boss. Sometimes, like I know that I work with somebody who is my director, who's super motivating and super encouraging, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that she does. Um, but you have to also be able to want that too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
What I was going to say to kind of piggyback off of what you were kind of that end thought is if for whatever reason it's not around you right now,
Hmm.
you got to be brave enough, courageous enough, and step into the uncomfortable feeling of going out and looking for it, though.
Very
Right?
true.
Like, I think that's a part of the growth mindset is if you're in a point where you're like, man, I really don't see it. Like, I really don't. I'm looking around me, I'm looking at the people, and I don't see that inspiration, motivation, or anything or anyone that uplifts me or empowers me, then you got to go seek it,
Yeah.
right? The same way you seek knowledge, you got to seek these same feelings as well. The same way, right? If you're not feeling love in this relationship, you might end it and you might look for it somewhere else. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like common ex- experiences or interactions that all stem or are rooted in that same feeling of I need to look for it, right? Because I
Hmm.
know it's there, but you also got to know it's there and believe that it's there, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this in our attempt to record this the first time. The concept of if you're the smartest person in the room, you're gonna have to
You
start
need
looking for
to
different
look for
rooms,
another room.
not because
Yeah.
there is anything wrong with honoring yourself and recognizing yourself as the smartest person in that room, but that's your cap.
Yeah.
That might unintentionally create a fixed mindset because you might think you're the end all and you know it all
Hmm.
until you enter that next room and you get humbled and you
Yeah.
continue to practice that growth mindset and realize, oh shit, there's more.
Yeah.
There's more. And there's people who know it.
Yeah.
And here's the other interesting thing I've learned as I've gotten older. A lot of, especially as now you and I are entering that kind of like OG stage in our lives,
Yes, you are.
not fully, but to the youth, especially since we work with youth,
Yeah.
they'll let us know.
They'll
They'll let us
quick.
know, right?
Yeah.
That we're not as cool as maybe we once thought we were. But I think you and I are great examples, and there's even other examples such as Pastor Woods. Let me see who else can I shout out. Brother Taylor, one of my fraternity brothers, another
Nice. Nice.
great one. Brother Moses, Chance, and his dad Daryl Moses, who want to give game.
Yeah.
Like they have
Eager.
that knowledge and they want
Hmm.
to give it. They're just waiting for someone to ask for it
Yeah.
or for you to show an interest or an openness for it. So I think that's the thing where a lot of people fear like, well, I don't want to bother them. Like, oh, I don't want to be a nuance. Look, if you're bothering somebody, anybody would have bothered them. They're just
Mm.
bothered people.
Right.
Because good people, they're so willing and waiting to give you the knowledge and the insight and the wisdom that you want.
Hmm.
Right? But again, you gotta want it. You gotta go look for it.
Yeah, and I mean, keeping that in mind, right, and especially with what you were talking about, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're almost doing yourself a disservice
Mm-hmm.
if you stay in that room. I growing up playing football or soccer, like I moved up from a team that I grew up playing with to an older age bracket
Yeah.
because I felt like I was good enough, and I was kind of done
Yeah.
with that age.
Yeah.
Like I was playing against some of the same people
Mm-hmm.
still.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was just a cakewalk
Yeah, it was
after a
easy.
while.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, what am I really doing here? So
Yeah.
I moved up and immediately got challenged
Mm-hmm.
by my boy G, who actually got murdered and stuff, but like he
Mm.
physically challenged me like all the
Mm.
time with just like cheap shots in practice, and it was like, dude, relax.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, no, this is how it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
I was just so comfortable having these like super leisurely kind of practices and essentially just
Going through the
walkthroughs,
motions.
going
Yeah.
through the motions,
Mm-hmm.
that I forgot what it was to compete,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you have somebody who's willing to do that with you and for you, take that initiative to do it.
Yeah. Embrace that challenge.
Embrace the challenge.
Yeah.
Like just accept it for what it is, and soak up as much as you can,
Yeah.
because ultimately it's going to fall on you to either do anything,
Yeah.
right? Like don't fool yourself and say that, oh, I gave it my all, because I constantly hear people like, this always happens to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
oh, again.
Yeah.
What it's like, well, is it because it's just a coincidence that it
Yeah.
keeps on happening to you,
Yeah.
or is it you?
What responsibility can you take
Right.
in the outcome that you keep experiencing?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Are you taking inventory?
Yeah.
taking the responsibility to do so,
Yeah.
accountability, like, hey, man, I gotta stop parking right there because I keep on getting a
Getting a
ticket.
ticket. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that
It's a great
you're
example.
doing
Yeah.
that's contributing to your
The
failures,
cycle of that
right?
outcome. Yeah.
And that's speaking from
Uh-huh.
experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know this because I know this.
Yeah. It's happened to
I
you. Yeah.
Yes. And it goes back to I'm not going to be doing the same thing that I did last year this year.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do the same thing
Yeah.
next year. I'm doing this year.
Yeah.
I'd be doing myself a disservice.
Yeah.
And it's not trying to sort of hit a delete button and erase
Yeah.
everything and move forward. It's more like, well, what am I building off
Yeah.
this?
Stepping stone.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. There's this concept within the Bible that's it's a constant, right? Like you reap what you sow, like the harvest,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
there's
Great
the
example.
harvesting season and stuff. And once again, we're shouting out people left and right
Yeah. Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shout
I
out
know.
to Bishop Woods for this one.
This was not intentional, by the way.
No, no, and
Well, it is, but like it wasn't
well,
planned. You know what I
and this
mean?
is our conversations all the
Yeah.
time because you're supposed to draw inspiration from different
Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
that are happening in your life. And even before I touch on the harvest and reap what you sow concept that Bishop Woods, a fraternity brother, I had no idea,
Yeah.
right, that
Yeah.
that was your fraternity brother. I posted a picture once a few years ago, and you hit me up. I was like, "Yo,
Oh yeah. I remember
we
that.
are in the same fraternity."
Yeah.
Had no clue. Working for New Door. I had mentioned your name or in the conversation or something, and then Omar Butler, CEO, was like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait, Antonio, like Antonio." I was like, "Who are you talking
Yeah.
about?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Showed him a picture of you. He was like, "It's such a small world." So
Yeah.
that was not intentional at all. I forgot what I was gonna say. What was I talking about?
You were talking about Brother Woods. Well,
Brother
my Brother
Woods.
Woods.
Oh, right. And he brought up this sort of like, what does it really all mean, right?
Hmm.
Because reaping and sowing can be kind of considered the beginning and the
In
end
the
of
end,
something,
yeah.
and then the harvest and everything that comes with that is sort of the middle part,
The
right?
process.
So the process of it. So what are we harvesting?
Yeah.
Are we mixing seeds,
Mm-hmm.
right? Are we mixing seeds of love? Are we mixing seeds of hate, all in the
Mm.
same harvest? Are we trying to plant something that we planted last year
Yeah.
and expecting it to come out good
Differently.
this
Oh, yeah.
year?
Yeah. If it, especially if it didn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
How's your soil? Are you hardened?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you willing to accept love and
Yeah.
knowledge, so that whatever you plant is fruitful and comes out and better than it did last year? Are you holding on to the same harvesting methods? So these are all concepts that attribute to a growth mindset, right, and a fixed mindset in a sense. Because if you're
Yeah.
still doing what you've been
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
and it isn't working, you can't really expect anything to be to change the definition of insanity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And as we kind of near the end, I think what I want to share that is an extension of what you shared. One of the things that I feel like I've been experiencing, I'm 33 right now, I'm about to turn 34 this month, April 28th.
Oof, man.
Man, I know,
Catching up.
reality check of just life going by so fast. But one of the things I've struggled with, and I'm gonna be a bit vulnerable here, is that the concept of loving myself. A lot of people I think out there, especially who follow me on social media, see how much I push myself, see how much I do physically, mentally, whether it's reading books, whether it's sharing my workouts, whether it's trying to encourage and uplift people. And I think a lot of that is because I've always felt like in doing so, it took away from me having to focus on the fact that I might not be giving myself that same love. So I'm giving it to everyone else, right? But I think it's kind of been my way of justifying, well, that's why I can't give it to myself. I'm giving it to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So
I see
interestingly
that.
enough, I've reached a point at 33, it took me 33 years, I'm about to turn 34, where I finally feel like I'm experiencing what self-love looks and feels like. And it's kind of odd because there's moments where it feels kind of selfish, but I know it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It just means
Mm-hmm.
that I have clear boundaries of what I am okay with having and who I'm okay with having in my life and who I'm not okay with having in my life and what I'm not okay with having in my life. And that may look like people who might not be thoughtful in regards to how they talk to me, right? It may
Yeah.
come off as very disrespectful. It may be very clear that they might not value me in a way that I think I deserve to be valued, right? That kind of comes with the self love. Is
Hmm.
now I'm having like an expectation for myself that I feel is reasonable and I feel is healthy. It's not one that's coming from a place of like eliteness or I need to be treated like a king or anything like that, right? But it's just very foundational things of like treat people the way you want to be treated.
Hmm.
If somebody is giving you loving energies, or if I'm giving loving energies, like yeah, I want to get that back, right?
Yeah.
I'm done making excuses for people as to why they can't give it to me. I can
No.
acknowledge and recognize why you can't, but that's not going to mean that I'm just going to keep being there and accepting the 25% that you're giving me, which is then giving me anxiety, is giving me stress, is making me then wonder if that's all I'm worth, right? Took me 33 years, man, to finally break that fixed mindset of me thinking that I need others to validate me. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. I think for so long, 33 years, I've needed others to validate me through the way they treated me, through the way they told me that what they think about me, how I make them feel, where it's like, nah, I can validate myself. And I can do that every day by making the most out of every day, pushing myself mentally, emotionally, physically, and surrounding myself with people who just make me feel even better about myself in a healthy way because they see who I am, they value who I am, and they enjoy my presence as much as I enjoy theirs.
Yeah. I mean, I feel you, brother. I
Yeah,
really, really do. Uh, have grace. I'm gonna tell you what you tell me all the time about my back.
yeah, yeah,
Have grace with yourself. But do know that all your thoughts and all the work that you put into this um, is very valid. People will treat you how they think of you, right? So they'll say things in a funny way or
mm-hmm.
or this and that, and that should be a tell sign of like what you should reciprocate as well.
Yeah,
I struggle with that a lot. It's something that we mentioned with the episode that wasn't completely recorded, and something else that I'm sure I'll dive into some other time. But it's a real thing, man. It's a real thing. Sort of really, really finding, that peace within yourself and that love within yourself. Like, but for real.
yeah, yeah, for
Like
real. Not just saying it.
not just
Mm-hmm.
saying it, to yourself.
Yeah,
Well, you should,
yeah.
but when you don't just say it and you actually
Feel it.
feel it, and
Yeah,
then you believe it,
believe it.
and then you walk with it, and then you
Shit feels
wear it.
different, bro.
You know, it's
In a good
just
way.
and people who uh don't who've known you for your whole life and see that for the first time are going to be shell shocked.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah,
gonna take a step back. Like I said this in that one episode, I always try to compare it to you're in the same room, and then all of a sudden you shine bright,
yeah,
and their natural reaction is to turn away real quick
yeah,
and kind of be like, "Oh, what's going on?"
yeah,
Right?
yeah. This isn't you. Yeah.
This ain't you,
Mm-hmm.
right? This
Mm-hmm.
is this is at the very least unfamiliar to
Yes.
to me,
Yeah.
who's looking at
There,
the
there.
person.
Yep.
Some eyes will adjust and they'll be fine with it. They'll learn to accept it, and others will completely turn away
Yeah.
and not want to look at that.
Yeah.
And that's another hurtful part of the part of the process,
Yeah.
and a whole different thing to come to terms with, right? Because a lot of times it's the people that you love
The most.
the
Yeah.
most.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, man. Yo,
yeah,
this was
brother, man.
dope. I'm. It's interesting how life works. That after that first attempt at the second episode didn't work out, we had this initial frustration. We're like, damn, this
Right.
didn't work. Our mic broke, by the way,
We
so we
had
couldn't
a
even
few.
try to
We
record.
couldn't.
Um,
Yeah,
but I'm sure you agree with this. Everything happens for a reason, man.
absolutely.
And I couldn't actually have asked for this to have been a better episode.
Yeah, it
Um,
was great. Felt great.
yeah, and we don't even know if it's actually recording this
We
time.
don't.
So I hope it did, and if it didn't, we'll figure it out.
Well, and if it did, a few things that I do want to plug, if
Yeah,
you
for
if you
sure. Go
don't
for it.
mind.
Go for it.
So this Sunday, Anselmo and I,
Mm,
and my buddy from Moving Forward, are participating in a Men Who Cook fundraiser
mm,
for the Girls Club of California, about here in the Bay Area. I'm sorry. So I'll plug that on social media and
Yep.
stuff, and something that we're gonna start adding to our description, our
Yeah.
social media handles.
Yeah.
And then also for moving forward as well, we always have our annual 5K. This year is in
Mm.
July. We used to have it in August, so it's creeping
Okay.
up.
Okay. That's
So just
coming
trying
up.
to get the word out there as much as possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, besides that, man, thank you so much once again.
Likewise,
I
bro.
needed that check in. I needed that conversation, and hopefully, somebody gets a few nuggets out of the fixed and growth mindset.
Yeah.
Once again, this is just our strong opinions on that,
Yeah.
with some considerable amount of study
Yeah.
behind the theory and the concept of it. But yeah, man, that's all
Yeah.
I gotta say,
Appreciate you, brother.
brother, man. All right.
Let's hope that recorded, man. That was good.